Hi everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here. Yes, I'm about to. Yes, that's why I'm about to introduce you guys. Thank you all for being here on time. This is a very interesting call regarding the latest updates from Powerhouse. So we have shared the link from the post because there are probably many questions that are going to address here today. So while we are waiting, it's important that you also type during the call all the questions that you may have for this meeting. We have like an agenda to follow. You are going to listen this from Walter. Walter, it's a pleasure to have you here again. Welcome, T. We're going to have both of them from Powerhouse. I don't know if you guys are ready to start or if you want to wait for more people to join, but I think we're ready. So whenever you want, please go ahead. Yeah, well, actually, I'm just going to make like a brief introduction from both of you, but if I'm aware that you also are Walter, you're going to mention about the like the general work that you've been doing starting in here. But I think that you might be the right one for give us all an introduction.
Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining. I'm not sure if we're supposed to wait a little bit longer as people are still joining.
Yeah, maybe I'm going to
Looks
start
like
just
we're
while
ready
we
to get
while we
started.
wait for people. Yeah. So, do you want to mention the agenda that you guys have shared with us while we wait for more people to join?
I suspect Chris may have some issues connecting the audio, so I think I'll kick us off. So yeah, again, welcome everyone. Thanks for SoFi. Oh, apologies, I cannot hear her. Yeah, I hear like the jingles and everything, but I can't hear any voices.
Okay, what about now? I left the chat and I came back again. Can you hear me now? I think the only one that can hear me is Wout. Everybody can hear me, right? Can you please give me like a reaction so I know that everyone can hear me? Okay, good.
This is Kianga. I can hear you, Chris. Walter, do you hear me?
Same here. I can hear everyone. Here.
Okay, this is totally normal. We've been having issues with Discord for so long. So, okay, well, we're going to wait for Walter to come back and in just a while. But yeah, this is kind of like normal. So I don't know if maybe Teep, do you want to start? But the agenda basically that I'm going to also share with all of you so you can be aware on the certain topics. We have also shared these in the forum, in our Discord channel. So basically, Walter is gonna give like a general introduction from like 20 minutes, and then they're gonna be like some time for questions, and then Teep is going to talk us, and he has a presentation, some slides, some wireframes related to real assets and the post. But this is important. We have been issues, right, with the transparency and communication. So I think that these are the perfect meetings. We have the guests here, and there are a lot of questions, and we sometimes do not have answers when we pose the questions in the forum, and we just say it out loud. So what's the best way to have the guests in here to receive some answers? And even if they don't have the answers, well, they must know and address the questions that we may have. So yes, have your questions ready. You can share whenever you want during the call. And I don't know if Walter, you can hear me now. I see it here. I cannot see in the call. Yes. So can you hear me now, Walter?
All right. Can everyone hear me? Because I'm still unable to hear anything. Okay, then just tell me in the channel that I can talk. I'll walk us through the intro. I have 10 calls every day, but of course now the audio setup breaks. All right. Yeah, so apologies for that. I'll share my screen and then just get started. Okay, so I'll walk us through this. So yeah, thanks for having us. We're very excited to have the first of hopefully a whole series of community calls where we can talk more in detail about our roadmap and our role at MakerDAO. So yeah, we are Powerhouse. Powerhouse is involved in building and rolling out software that will implement the Atlas rules in the form of the Universal DAO Toolkit. If you've been following the forum, you may have seen that we've introduced ourselves a while ago. And so there was a recent status update where we talked a bit more about our role. So we are building the software for efficient decentralized operations, transparency reporting, and operational data management. We are helping DAOs to conduct business process analysis. So this is how they work internally, and Teep will talk a little bit more about how we go about this and how we are helping MakerDAO specifically with real assets portfolio reporting. But as part of our role, we also want to co-create with stakeholders. So that's why we are here today talking about the features that we're building to collect that early feedback, make sure that we're building what's really needed. And in doing this, we enable maximum progress towards automation, AI integration, and participation in the DAO. So the infrastructure that we're building that manages all this data, it really makes the organization AI ready. And of course, with Maker's vision around Atlas and the involvement of AI, we think this is a very good match. And then lastly, we tie it up with decentralized operation solutions for pseudonymous contributors, because this too has been a challenge for many DAOs, how to work effectively with pseudonymous contributors and build a long-lasting working relationship with contributors, and yeah, make sure that the DAO knows who to trust and how to work with them. So that's quite a lot, and so this is the reason why the stack that we're offering is actually has a couple of different areas and layers. And I'm going to give this quick intro just to create a little bit of context what the topic that Teep will be talking about. where you can see that in the many things that we're doing. So the way that it's structured is that in the first place, we are building a decentralized operations base infrastructure here at the bottom. So this is a suite of open source products for Maker that will be fully integrated with the Atlas. And these are really the tools to build what we call business features on top of. And these business features, they are quite specific to the organization. So while the products that we're building are very general, they will be offered not just to MakerDAO, but also to other DAOs, because that is part of the vision of Endgame to build self-sustainable businesses. The business features that we're building, they are, on the contrary, they're quite specific to the organization. And so the business features that we're building for Maker, they are different than the business features that we're building for other DAOs. For Maker, for example, today we will be talking about real-world assets portfolio reporting, a specific feature from Maker. There's other features that we're considering for the future roadmaps, things like the Ecosystem Actors Directory, AVC membership administration, transparency reporting tools tailored for Maker's use case, and then also venturing into legal tech, which is part of the concerns that DAO contributors typically have, to make sure that that is also custom built for Maker purposes. There's other features like projects and roadmaps. Of course, there is a general component to it, but the good thing is that we can tailor these features again exactly to the needs of the specific organization, and that is thanks to the infrastructure layer that that all these business features are built on top of. The next thing is that our infrastructure offers this this functionality not just in a user-friendly way to human contributors, but all these functionalities, they are automatically, because of the framework that we're using, automatically they are available to AI agents as well. So if we build a feature, for example, the real asset portfolio reporting that we'll go into detail today, we show you typically the manual process, the manual editors, which is needed for humans to interact with the feature. But all these, all the buttons, all the sliders, all the menus that you see, they're available for AI agents as well, and that makes us, really well suited to prepare the organization for further API integrations, agent training facilitation, for example, AI agent integration, and so on. Clearly, this is a developing area of what we're doing, but this is built in or baked into it from the start. And then last but not least, building software is not enough for success in an organization. We need to make sure that the software is actually rolled out successfully and is properly adopted by everyone. And so this is the last part, the last piece of the puzzle that we're offering is an important layer of operational support. So as I mentioned, we do things like business process design, but more in general, like we help think about decentralized org design. We build the software that matches that, but then we do the software onboarding and adoption, help with the adoption as well, make sure that the different ecosystem actors are coordinated that contribute to the software. And then we also offer project management assistance, because the key to building successful decentralized operations for a DAO such as Maker is to make sure that the organization can work effectively with its ecosystem actors or its suppliers. And so yeah, that's we offer that manual assistance as well, because that is needed to turn the whole thing into success. As I mentioned, we have these different layers, and so that means that our development timeline is also reflecting that, and that is something that is quite important to keep in mind when we're providing updates. Is that as Powerhouse is an entirely new spin-off, and that we started, I think, about half a year ago along the path that we're currently on. And so we need some time first to build that, to put that base infrastructure in place and make sure that we are building, we have the basic tools that will allow us to build those business features that I was talking about on top of. And so, for example, in the past months, we've been working with our team to start thinking about very general infrastructure, such as document modeling. That is the shaping the data that is available, the data and the processes in the organization. How can we define that, for example, with a schema language? How can we capture that? And how can we provide document editors that will allow any contributors to view and edit that data in the organization? This is very general functionality. And then we take those tools and use them to build those business features on top of, for example, real asset portfolio reporting. And so today, for the first time, we'll dive deeper into one of those business features that typically, as a customer, the most DAO contributors will be most excited about, because this is maker-specific stuff. But again, thinking about our development stages, keep in mind that we need some time to build out that base infrastructure. And then as we progress over time, we'll be able to build those business features in more and more rapid succession. So real assets portfolio reporting is the first one, but the pace will pick up, and many more will follow in the coming year. And then lastly, of course, we do need to make sure that there is that operational rollout, make sure that it's not just the software that is available, but also that it is correctly adopted by the organization. So that being said, we do have, since a short time ago, we have enough of a view on our roadmap to commit at least to an MVP alpha version release. So this will be the first version of the software that will feature one of those business features, specifically the one we're talking about today, real asset portfolio reporting. We will have that first test version available for the community, not to start using very heavily in production from day one, but already to start trying it out, provide more feedback, and keep improving until we get to that production quality that we want. And that first alpha version release, in our case, is actually, it's a combination of two elements. So one is the new architecture MVP, what I was talking about, these different layers with the base infrastructure, the business feature built on top of that, specifically providing that functionality for real asset portfolio reporting. But for those of you who have been following us for a bit longer, you know that we have already built a number of prototypes in the past for Maker. As we progressed from the MakerDAO Sustainable Ecosystem Scaling Core Unit, at one point we realized we need to start building software to implement best practices in the infrastructure of the DAO, rather than only talking about best practices. And we built those prototypes, and so for our first release, while these prototypes were separate from the new product vision that we've developed around Powerhouse, we are not throwing those prototypes away. On the contrary, we are extending them and we are refactoring them so that that same functionality will be available in that MVP alpha version release as well. So we're combining that with the new features and basically making use of the prototypes that were developed before. To give you more specific ideas, so I think a year and a half ago, something like that, we released the first prototype version of our expenses dashboard, which brought, at the time, a lot more transparency to core unit expenses. And so this is one example of a prototype that will be transitioned into a longer term product. And in this case, this will become the Powerhouse Fusion platform, which is the public collaboration platform that that is part of our product suite. There's a second tool which is known to maybe the core unit administrators, much more specific, that is used by the core units to report those expenses or to publish the numbers to the platform, the expenses dashboard. And yeah, this is a very early prototype of the kind of editor software that we'll be looking at today. And yeah, in the same way that we'll talk about real-world asset portfolio reporting, the core units have already been doing that reporting around their expenses with an early prototype budget tool, as we call it. And so that one will be completely revised and provided with a much better user experience through the new Connect product. But again, there is some continuity there so that we take our lessons learned and transform that tool into the new version. The decentralized identity and reputation solution, Renown. For that one, we don't have a prototype available that's used at makers today, but yeah, we actually did a hackathon a while ago. So if you're really interested, we can share with you some presentation that shows that one. But this one is mostly a new development that we're preparing for the alpha release as well. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, we want to be AI ready, make sure that all the functionality, all the processes that we are implementing are available to AI agents as much as to humans. So we already started with that vision pretty early with the Expenses Dashboard API, which is also available in a sandbox studio. And that one too will be included in the new version and reworked. The last product is typically one that people are also excited about. It's an Academy product. We think that one will be absolutely critical in the future, but right now, this one isn't in active development and not included in the alpha release. Yeah, this is another overview of what I already mentioned, so I'll skip over it. And with all that context in place, want to be a little bit more specific. So these different products that we're building, these different business features, the features that we're building, the alpha release that we're preparing for, how does it all come together? Well, this is basically it in one picture. So for the alpha release, we are working on 4 different tracks. The first 2, protocol expense accounting, and the project-based workflow. This is the expenses dashboard and the existing prototypes, such as the API, that we are reworking into the new products. So that is included for the MVP alpha release. Of course, these are the kind of features that are never really fully finished. So what we will be delivering is a integrated version of those, first version that works on the new architecture. If you're interested in the details, you can have a look in the forum post or join one of our future community calls where we'll be talking about them. But today we are going to focus on the next one, which is the integrated real-world asset reporting feature, which contains, it contains functionality on the public collaboration platform Fusion. It will be available through the new API. But today we'll talk about the specific reporting flow that people will be using in our Connect product. So that's the focus of today's discussion. And then, of course, to support all that, we will need that new base infrastructure. So the Powerhouse proof of concept that has the 4 base products: Fusion, Switchboard, Connect, and Renown, working together and to support these other features. So this is what we will be talking about today, and then in the coming weeks as well, with additional community updates. But for today, I want to hand it over to Teep, who will be talking about one specific track on these 4, so the integrated real assets reporting feature. And yeah, I'll suggest that maybe Teep or someone else can take over the screen sharing, because it will be very complicated for me to go to the next slide if I don't hear anyone asking. So I'll stop my screen sharing here and hand it over to Teep.
Well, thanks, Wouter. Just check everyone can hear me. Yes, perfect. So I'll basically pick up in the same presentation where Wouter left off. So basically now, for this part of the call, we will zoom in on the real-world asset reporting feature, and then also show you some updated wireframes and some early-stage low-fidelity designs that we've basically worked on. But first of all, I wanted to take sort of a step out and talk about the Powerhouse business analysis flow. So this is basically the flow that we will do when designing and coming up with new features in the roadmap. So we did this flow for real-world asset reporting. It'll be the same for projects and any of the other new business features that we have in the roadmap. So maybe starting off at the top for people that are unfamiliar with what exactly business analysis is. It's all about translating business needs into features that add value. So real-world asset reporting, for example, noticed a lot of discussions over the past year on the forum, in the community, that reporting could be improved, and we basically believe that we can provide a solution for that. So business analysis, our flow is then split into these steps to make sure that we cover the full requirements. So the first step that we do is problem statement and solution. I'll drill into these a bit more. And then we go to a needs analysis. We define who's actually involved and who are the stakeholders. Then we define some specific examples. Then we construct low fidelity wireframes, which is the step we're on now. And then we hand over to designers, which construct high fidelity designs, which can then be handed off to our developers to actually create the feature that can be used in production. So zooming in on the individual steps, the problem statement and solution is all about identifying a specific issue or challenge and proposing a corresponding resolution. So real-world assets, for example, we identified that the issue was that there was a lack of unified and efficient reporting, and this was because there was no specific software. There wasn't a framework that was followed. It seemed to be different for different arrangers, and this resulted in some problems such as data fragmentation. It's also hard to compare results when they're not providing in the same format. So these type of things. And then we identified a proposed solution. So this solution we identified was to create an automated reporting platform that integrates seamlessly with the workflows. So the important point here is that we want to create a solution that doesn't require any extra work by any of the parties involved, but it basically meets the needs of the problem and makes everyone's lives kind of better. The next stage in the flow then would be a needs analysis and gathering stakeholder requirements. So we have the problem, and then we have to list through who are all the stakeholders. So we actually group them down into who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and who needs to be informed, and then split them out into action and implementation. So action stakeholders would be people or parties that actually commit the action. So in this example of real-world assets, the arrangers and the allocator DAO operators would be the action stakeholders. They will be the ones that use the infrastructure that we create. And the implementation stakeholders are the ones that create that software or practices. So we identified Powerhouse, BA Labs as an example. And then we reach out to all of the stakeholders that we identified and basically check their requirements and also check specific tasks. So an arranger has a requirement that they want to report accurately on the transactions. And their specific tasks is that they need to basically submit those transactions, ledgers, and reports. So once all of these requirements are collected, we can then define more specific user roles and responsibilities. So the main roles and responsibilities from the requirements is basically the arranger who is submitting the transactions to the operator with proof of correctness. So they are basically submitting evidence and transactions to the operator who acts as a sort of audit function that will then review these transactions for correctness and completeness. Then the next step is to define specific use case scenarios. So these are basically very specific examples of how the software or the product or the feature will be used. So they need to be relatable and they need to be specific, and they need to then capture the needs that we laid out in the earlier steps. So, for example, use case 1 is all about opening up the application, clicking to their profile, clicking through their transactions and assigning them, putting supporting evidence, and then submitting that transaction report to the operator. And we create a variety of these use case scenarios, and these then basically go to inform low fidelity wireframes. So we develop initial representations of basic structures and functionalities. So this looks sort of familiar, like software, but it doesn't have the details of a high fidelity final design. And we then iteratively collect feedback from stakeholders to ensure that these wireframes and designs meet their needs for the problem. So that is the business analysis flow. And now I will open up the wireframes and show you guys in detail what we've come up with. So this first screen here is an example of the Connect application that Wouter mentioned earlier. So this would be opened in a browser window or a application on the user's PC, and they would be asked to log in with Renown. So this is where they will tie their Ethereum address or decentralized identity to their actions within the application. So they would authorize the application, and then they would be logged in the workspace here. In the first example we'll walk through, it's from the view of an arranger. So in this, we have Monetalis. So Monetalis is logged in, and they're then presented with the drives that they have access to based on what is relevant for them, basically. So they'd navigate to their team drive, and they'd have a list of the transaction reports that have already been created. And then they would be prompted to open the transaction report specifically with the real world asset portfolio editor. So this is a specific document editor just for real world asset reports, and it will only allow people to do specific functions relative to real world asset reporting. They would click through there and open up this. And this is the view that they would see when they entered into the report. So if any of you have seen the real world asset reports on the forum, the inspiration for this has been brought from there. So they open it up, they have a navigation bar, they have the current date of the portfolio as it was last updated or as it has been updated. They could filter on an SPV. For this example, we have Taco, and they would have a table here with information on the current as well as sold and matured assets. So they have ID and name, maturity if it's relevant, the notional value and the purchase price, and the realized surplus. So this table view here is a condensed view of the data that's contained, and the user could then click the individual asset, and it would open this form at the bottom, which has a more detailed breakdown of the information. So you can see there's additional fields such as QSIP and ISIN, which are identifiers for real world assets, as well as notional and the purchase price, which is here, as well as purchase proceeds, which is additional information. And this calculation at the bottom shows the total discount and the current value, as well as if there's been any surplus that's realized, as well as the total surplus. And then at the bottom here, you can see when this asset was last updated and by who, with the Ethereum address and a date. And this is the sort of condensed view, but for each page that we will show that's in portrait, there will be an accompanying landscape view, which will have all the information from the form at the bottom available within the table. So you could see it in one go if you had a wide monitor. So from this view, the user or the arranger may want to add or edit an asset. So they could edit asset details on this button here, and it would take them through. And it would only allow them to edit certain fields, as the other fields are basically a function of the underlying transactions. And what I mean by that is that the type and the maturity and the QSIP and the name are relevant to the asset, but the transactions underneath it basically are added up to inform these numbers at the bottom, which I'll show in a minute. There'll also be an option, similar
Sorry,
form.
Deep, can you try and zoom in just a bit more? I think the details will be better visible for people.
This?
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, let me know if there's any more. I'll try and zoom in a bit on a small screen. This is the similar form, but for adding an asset. So same thing, you would add the fields that are relevant, but the other ones are calculated from the underlying transactions. So when they had this page with all the assets that might be relevant, they'd then want to go and see transactions, which is the lower level sort of underlying information underneath the asset portfolio. So they would navigate to this tab, and similar layout to the portfolio page. You'd have this table at the top with information such as timestamp, the asset involved, the quantity if it is relevant. Some will not have a quantity if they're things like interest, the USD amount of the transaction, and the corresponding cash balance change, which is the change in the cash balance as a result of this, as well as if there's any attachments that are linked to this transaction and how many there might be. So if we take this example here, the arranger selects transaction number 3, and this opens the form at the bottom the same way. And this signifies that there's a group transaction, and this is the group transaction view. Basically, what I mean by that is this transaction 996,510 is a group transaction which has multiple underlying base transactions. So per our discussions with the stakeholders, Monetalis and Stakehouse, they basically told us that Monetalis would like to submit information on the lowest possible level to make it easier for the arrangers. So they basically want to upload things like bank statements and have all the transactions get submitted this way. But for the end users that want to conduct some data analytics or have an understanding of the portfolio, then sometimes transactions actually need to be grouped. So if we take this example here, there's a purchase of 1 million T-bills. So that is the first transaction. There's 1 million of the T-bills that are moved to this report. And the resulting cost of this was 996,403. But then there was additional 2 transactions on top of this, which is the Celadon broker fee of $7 and an exchange agent fee of $100, resulting in a total cash balance change of 996,510 with 2 attachments that are linked. But if you want to get a further understanding of exactly what goes into this, you would be able to change to the list view, and this would give you the option to add the transactions individually like this. So you can see here that there is an asset purchase, I'll zoom in a bit more, of 1 million. So this means they bought 1 million of this. There was the cost was 996,403, and there was also 2 fees associated with it. So you could switch between these views to get a better understanding of exactly how this transaction is made up of. Similarly to the portfolio, let me know if you can't see that. Similarly to the portfolio, you could edit the transaction. It would open the form. You would be able to select the asset from a drop-down, and then it would have the details, which you could then alter in the form that would open above it. And then depending on the type of asset that you picked, for example, if it was a treasury bill, the transaction type and the form would change. So a treasury bill would have a purchase or a sale. If it was a make a principal draw or return, which is when they basically pull money from or give money back to maker, this would be draw or return. So it would adjust based on the asset. It would give you the option to add attachments and things like that too. And you would also be able to, in a similar way, add a transaction. Same form pretty much. And then this also shows the flow for adding attachments. Add a transaction. This would shows the form for adding attachments. So if you needed to add an additional attachment, it would open out again above the form with a user flow that people are sort of familiar with. So drag and drop or browse, as well as having a list of the attachments that are already stored within this report or workspace. So if you have bank statements, they're likely to be relevant for more than one transaction. So they would be stored there and you could add them individually to the transactions. There'll also be a place where you can find sort of attachment storage bank on the tabs. And this would show the attachment as well as which transactions are associated, how many transactions are associated. And if you clicked on these, it would go back to the transaction page and filter on this transaction. It would also bring your attention to any attachments that have yet to have a transaction assigned and basically prompt the user to click through, and it would open an add a transaction with attachments already sort of put in there. There's also another tab which basically allows for setting of global sort of variables that you could filter on. So you could add here the SPV, which you can filter on in portfolio. And also here you would add service providers with their fees. So this allows you to add a specific service provider fee to the transaction. And the purpose of this is for basically when the data is all stored within the API, this will provide a better level of analytics that are able to be performed over the data. So we can filter then on a service provider or a fee type. We can get all the foreign exchange fees. We can see how much people are spending with different combinations. So that is the end of the arranger flow. So once they're happy with how the report looks, they've added all the transactions, they have they've checked that the asset amounts were correct, they would then send this report completed with the attachments to the allocated DAO operator, or basically somebody to check the report, sort of an audit function. And this shows the same view, but it's now in change tracking. So the change tracking is available for the arranger as well, but it's most relevant for the allocated DAO operator. And you can see change tracking is active as this is selected here. And what it basically allows the user to do is to compare two versions of the same document. So why would that allocated DAO operator want to do this? So they would take the latest version that has been submitted to them, and they would then compare this against the previous version, maybe one that they've already checked. And then it would bring the user's attention to things that have changed. So similar to if people have used VS Code or maybe Microsoft Word change tracking, it highlights specific areas that have adjusted and brings the user's attention even further into what exactly has changed. So here, there's been two changes to two of the assets. Specifically, the notional values have changed here. And you would click one of the assets, and it would give the breakdown of what exactly has changed. But then, even more detailed, you could then choose to open in full comparison if you had a wide screen. And this would bring your attention to exactly what has changed with the values that have changed. So this is sort of the perfect feature if you're auditing or checking between two versions. Straight away, you can see the size of the changes and where the changes have happened in sort of easy formatting without spending too much time trying to fiddle through the numbers. Then this is all good. You can see the assets, the change of value, but why have they actually changed? So to do that, you would go to the transaction listing, and a similar view on the 2 pages, you would have the same change tracking functionality. So if we walk through an example here, you can easily quickly see there's 2 transactions have been added here, and there's been some changes up here. So the change to transaction number 3 is that the cash balance change is adjusted, and there's been an additional attachment added. So you would then click to open that, and you would open the detailed view, and immediately it is apparent there's been a foreign exchange fee added, and the value has changed by 100, and there's been an attachment added. So if you were allocated DAO operator, you should expect to see evidence maybe provided in the attachment to the new added fee. And similar to the view I showed earlier, you would also be able to see in the list mode. So this even shows it slightly more clearly. So originally there was 3 transactions, they paid and they had 1 fee, and now there's an additional fee that was added with an additional attachment added. And the final page here basically shows that this is also possible in a portrait mode, but it's slightly more condensed. But if you needed to access it in portrait, it would be possible. So that is the flow of submitting to the allocated DAO operator. There's a number of user stories that are left to complete visuals for. So this is more about suggesting corrections and resubmissions of the report, as well as generating a summary with the attachment hashes. So one of the things I didn't mention that is key here is that the arranger or the one submitting the report will submit attachments that might be sensitive or might be private, but might be needed to basically ensure correctness. So the operator will be able to view these attachments, but then once they're happy and they've signed off with these, there will only be an attachment hash that will be provided in the report that is put to public mode, and that way private attachments can be basically ensured that they were viewed and they were correct without being displayed to people that shouldn't see them. And then the final user stories here is basically the report will be submitted and uploaded to the operations dashboard or Fusion, and the community or interested parties can then view this, or they can use the data from the API to build on top of. So yes.
Thank you, Teep. I'm going to connect this to a question from Kianga in the chat. And question is there a function to have a second ETH address verifying the test that the action of the primary address is valid? A second ETH address confirming that a bank statement is not a forgery, for example. And yeah, so this is the there's of course different levels of attestation, and the flow that we showed has one type of attestation. So we're dealing with evidence that yeah, it might not be, it might contain some private information, so that it cannot be published directly without directly on the public transparency dashboard. But we still want to be able to share that evidence between the arranger submitting the report and the operator then reviewing it. And this is exactly what is happening here. So every time that an update of the report is submitted from the arrangers to the operator, every one of those submissions is automatically signed, and every time that the operator publishes the resulting report to the public transparency dashboard, that submission is signed as well with their Ethereum identity. And so in this particular workflow, the arranger would attach the necessary evidence with a lot of detail so that the operator can feel confident that the reported numbers are indeed supported by the evidence. And yeah, the evidence should be good enough to convince the operator that they are not a forgery. This is the current version. Of course, in a future iteration, to make it even more watertight, we can imagine an external auditor having that role, potentially having access to the privileged information even within the financial institution itself. So the software supports this. It will be up to maker how quickly it wants to implement the full watertight end-to-end auditing and attestation functionality. But this is exactly the kind of workflows that are supported by the software. And I can add a couple more comments on how it all works behind the scenes, but I want to give the opportunity to ask more questions and add comments. So if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. In the meantime, I'll mention another thing, which is, I guess, tying it back to the intro that I gave. As you can see from the wireframes, this is incredibly detailed and specialized business logic. This is something that is very specific to MakerDAO and that has a lot of detail, which is important because that detail leads to the best practices in the organization being really captured. And then when someone new joins, if they use this workflow, they will automatically be following those best practices because the software takes them by the hand and has a very specific structure that basically only allows them to follow the best practice that has been defined by maker governance. And this is, for example, the critical difference between just using a spreadsheet or just using a general purpose tool that does not capture that very domain specific business logic, and that as a result also doesn't capture the best practice as it has been discovered and as the organization wants to protect it. And this is especially important in a decentralized environment because you don't have the typical middle management command and control structure where every new employee goes through training, and it's only when they're following the best practices manually that they're trusted with a higher degree of autonomy. This kind of training function is part of why the software is so important, because it needs to capture that best practice in a decentralized environment where you don't have that traditional corporate structure. Another comment I want to add is the fact that this is the very first business feature, and that's why it's taking us a long time to finish everything up and release it. But the way that we're building this is by implementing these reusable components. So, for example, the ability to compare different versions of the document side by side. This is a base functionality that will be available in the future editors that we're building, and so the way that the reusable base elements are made available will make it much easier for us to create editors like this much faster in the future. So it's the first one that is the most difficult one, and that takes the longest. It will take a couple of iterations, a couple of business features before we have fully fleshed out the reusable base infrastructure, but it will take up speed. And then as we keep on going, many more of these very specialized business features can be added on top at a relatively low cost, so that the organization can really go very far in defining, capturing all the processes, capturing all the data, defining all those best practices in software. So Chris is asking, when it comes to the reporting, is Powerhouse monitoring the arrangers? And can you explain how you're going to make sure that everything is in order? So it's our role to help the organization with the business process analysis, which is what we've been doing, which is why we've been able to come up with a very detailed piece of functionality as we've demonstrated today. But yeah, so we may have some role in actually running operations, but generally speaking, we are building the software for DAO contributors to fulfill these operating roles. So in case of the arrangers and the allocator DAO operators, Powerhouse is not the arranger, Powerhouse is not the operator. It's the operator that will use our software to review the reports submitted by the arrangers, and they will publish that result to that public collaboration platform that will be freely or like that will be readily available for everyone to inspect the published results. And one of the things you'll be able to do as a visitor of the platform is to go into the specific report, go into the specific update, and verify the cryptographic signatures that are attached, so that you can see that, yes, it was the arranger who submitted the original report, and that, yes, it was the operator who signed off on the correctness of the result based on the evidence that was presented by the arranger. And there's the nuance there that the evidence itself might actually no longer be available because it's part of an NDA or something like that. But the attestation of the operator will be cryptographically signed and available for inspection. If there is ever a situation where there is a dispute or we need to go back because the hash of the evidence is attached, anyone who can produce the original evidence can prove that, yes, this was the bank statement that the operator looked at, and on the basis of which they approved that report. So it's completely traceable, completely auditable, but at the same time, realistic, in which information can be shared publicly. We want to push that as far as possible, but not be not be too naive in assuming that everything can always be shared. So we need to cover those cases as well. Any other questions or comments?
Well, thank you so much for this. It has been like very detailed what you have provided during the call. Just to a reminder that this is being broadcasted, and so it's going to be recorded. You can repeat this call, and we're going to also provide the link for the recording, since maybe it's a lot of information and important information. I want to point out about this is going to be kind of like the first call that you're going to have with the community, right? Can we know about the next one, when it's going to be the specific topic, and when is it going to be?
Yeah, so we're still discussing internally what would be the best topic for the next one. So we'll be able to announce that soon. We'll also do it in collaboration with the AVCs, keep that conversation going. But which one it will be exactly the next one, and when it will exactly be, we still need to figure out. So we will announce that on the forum as soon as possible.
Perfect. I just shared in the chat the link of the video so you can rewatch it. I don't know if there's any specific part of the tool that you would really like AVCs to focus on feedback, or in general, people from maker ecosystem actors. If you are very specific, it's gonna be helpful also for us to provide you the feedback.
Yeah, so as you said, it was a lot of information that was presented today, so totally understand that there isn't a lot of specific feedback immediately, but we'll make that possible. So the wireframe that was presented by Teep we'll be able to publish that one on the forum and then give people more time to review it in their own time and ask more specific questions about the data and the flow and everything that's related to it. So we'll make that available.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have both of you here. It's always, this kind of issues at the beginning. It's normal. So for us, it has happened a lot of times. So we have been able to manage it pretty well. And I don't know if there's any other I don't know if there's questions or comments, or if Tib or you, Walter, would like to mention something before we finish the call. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to just say thank you for having us. The presentation that we gave today will be the first one of a series, so I would just ask everyone to keep an eye on the forum, and if you're interested in these updates on our roadmap, the different features that we'll be collecting feedback about, and then yeah, make sure to keep an eye on the forum and join the next one too. Thanks for having us.
And thank you everyone for coming. It has been like a lot of people wanted to know more about the update. So it's awesome to have you all in here. Well, that will be all. I don't know if Tib, is there anything that you would like to say before we stop the call?
No, that's everything. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.